Welcome to Cornerstone Conversations, where we discuss timely topics impacting communities, cultures, and economies. The first topic we're going to dive into in this series is family business. Currently, there are 32 million family businesses in the U.S., generating over half of our GDP as a country. They also employ 83 million people. What's interesting is only 30% of family businesses make it to the second generation, and only 12% make it to the third. You've probably heard of the great wealth transfer that is taking place across the globe in the next 5 to 7 years. 40% of all the small businesses in the U.S. are owned by a baby boomer who is reaching retirement age pretty soon. As coaches, we're really interested in what those impacts do to communities and cultures at large. We've had the privilege of walking alongside a lot of family business leaders over the past few years, and we believe this major intersection is something that can really impact communities well. We're going to talk to 6 dads and sons that are working together and are trying to navigate what it means as a son to carry forward what their dad started, and as dads trying to let go of something that they've held on to for so long. Thanks again for doing this, guys. Excited to talk with Brad and Marshall Smith, who I've really enjoyed getting to know you guys over the last year or so. I know you two have known each other longer, and we can get into that, but it's been fun to get to know you guys and kind of your heart for what you're doing. So when we, as Cornerstone, talk about family ventures or family businesses in general, there's kind of 2 categories we either work with or talk about. Those are legacy businesses. So these are 4, 5, 6 generation businesses that have been around, and your great grandfather started it, and now Marshall's turn, which is not you guys. The other category is something I just call joint family venture. So this is a dad and son saying, let's do something new together. Let's go put our fingerprints on something together, and start something or buy something in your case, which is a cool category. Honestly, you were kind of the inspiration for this podcast too, Brad. We were, I don't know if you remember this, but we were at coffee early on last spring, and we were talking about Pender-Craft and what you guys were facing and all the challenges and stuff. But you said, ultimately, the reason I decided to do this was for a chance to work with Marshall and disciple him in the workplace. And I walked away from that coffee, and I texted him immediately, and I texted Esther immediately, and was just like, this is such a cool thing that's happening. I never really heard anyone talk about, business that way or frame it up in that way. And we were working together, so I understood a little bit of kind of what that meant. But so thanks for that. And honestly, you're the inspiration for a lot of just this topic and us wanting to dive into this topic. So before we get into your background, where you were and what you were doing before and kind of the formation of your business, was that concept of working with Marshall in your head and heart for a while, and you were just looking for the opportunity, or did it just present itself and here you went?
Well, I think, Marshall and I talked about that a lot when he was young. I can remember him growing up. We had a farm, so he worked on the farm all the time. And we would talk about the potential maybe. And then the company that I used to work for, we had a big warehouse, and he swept the floors and put stuff away and, just did all kinds of things like that. And, he's an engineer, so had this engineering mindset. And, we talked about like, hey, what would it be like maybe if we worked together? And, I was open to it for sure, but I had told him, I think it'd be better for you to go somewhere else at first. And then when you've worked somewhere else 4, 5, 6 years and sort of got your feet on the ground, then we could potentially, do something. And in the meantime, I had an exit from the business that I was in. And, I just sort of felt like maybe that door was closed. Mm-hmm. I'd sort of semi-retired and was just trying not to be a deadbeat. Yeah. And, this opportunity sort of came back around. So
that's great.
That's a huge, I remember when Kyle called me after he had the coffee with you, and I remember he framed it up, but then he added something else, which was you had made the statement, and I don't want to, this is the big, huge insight, but, you made the statement of, why would you just go invest into another, set of apartments or another bunch of warehouses when you had a chance to invest into yourself and your son's relationship in a business or a work setting environment like what better thing could that be? And I just remember when he said that to me, the light bulbs just started exploding in me, because the traditional conventional thinking of, the son needs to go work somewhere else for a while, it still has some value, but with people making so much money faster in today's world, and with so much venture and entrepreneurial activity going on, I just think that this idea for me is a really interesting, timely one for this generation of G1s and G2s. So I really, really like the idea for you guys.
Yeah, that's a cool part of the story.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's interesting. I sort of had this view. It was never something I verbalized, but I had this view in the back of my mind that, well, once I retire, I'm just going to take it easy. You sort of got life in a good place and manageable place, and you're just going to relax. And when this opportunity came about, we started praying about it, and I just really felt like this is what God wanted me to do. And it was honestly, sort of counter to a lot of the wisdom that's out there now. It's like, hey, I'm in this, I'm 54. I'm not like I'm real old, but like I'm sort of entering this last sprint. And, you don't want to risk or upset the apple cart. You know what I mean? You don't want to risk too much. And, it was like, I feel like God is maybe teaching me a brand new lesson about, just trusting him and following his lead in it.
Yeah. I'm on the board of an organization called Praxis. And about 3 years ago, the chairman, CEO, and leader of the organization delivered an annual keynote talk. And he talked about the idea of, instead of de-risking, he felt like that we ought to be re-risking, not de-risking, when we move into these inflection times in life. And his big idea was, people of faith ought to be painting and pursuing a new quest, a big redemptive quest in life. And it could be working with your son, or it could be doing something. And so, but he really put in tension against each other this idea of de-risking, which is your point. Most of the time as you age, it's like, why would I take more risk? I need to be de-risking. Yeah. And the whole point of his deal is, no, you ought to be taking more risk with a robust faith that's fueling it, like you just talked about, which for me is a wonderful way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm reading this book right now. It's by this guy it's called Radical Stewardship. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
You know the author?
Yeah, I've heard sketchy things about the author, but the book's pretty good.
Believe those, please.
But, it's interesting, the timing of reading that book, Steve, because I just feel like so much of it's like right where I'm at. It's like I'm right in the thick of re-risking.
Yeah.
And, going through that book and the workbook, it's just like so many times, it's like God just sort of putting his finger on my chest and saying, okay, this is where you are. Are you ready? And, it's just been really meaningful to, go through that.
Fun.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the formation and what the business is a little bit. And you touched on your background a little bit, Brad, but how did this opportunity come about? Were you looking to buy a business, or were you doing some real estate stuff? What were you doing before this? How'd you get into it?
I'd worked at Kimmel Mechanical Systems for over 20 years and was able to sell my stock and do something different for a while. And after that, I never really sought this out, but I found myself just frequently being asked to evaluate businesses or to help with some acute problem. So, ironically, I had two different friends at the same time ask me to look at two different businesses that a local business broker had.
Not for you, for them.
Not for me.
Okay.
Just to evaluate the opportunity.
Yeah.
So, I went and I'd known the business broker for a long, long time, and went and sat down with him. We went through all the stuff in it. And then when we got done with that, the business broker said, "Hey, I've got something that you need to look at." And I remember just sort of chuckling, and I was like, I'm not interested. I don't want to, I don't want to buy another business right now. And he said, "Well, let me tell you about it." So he started telling me about it, and it was just right. It was like the 23rd of December. So Marshall and his wife were coming over to our house that night. And so he told me about this cabinet business. And then that night I shared with Marshall and his wife, and They were going to stay. They just had a baby. They were going to stay with us from the 23rd all the way through till New Year's. So they're going to stay a week with us at our house. And we started talking about it that night at dinner and just sort of kicking the idea around. And all of a sudden it started to grow legs. It's like, well, maybe we should go look at it. So between Christmas and New Year's, we went to look at the business, and we just started praying about it. We just was like, okay, God, could this be what you have for us? And I think for all four of us, Marshall and I and our wives, we just really felt like this could potentially be something God was calling us to. So we made an offer on the business, and they accepted it. And we, started about I think it was a 45-day period of due diligence. And the whole time I was praying like, okay, God, this is crazy.
Where's the off ramp?
Yeah. Just if this is not what you got for us, please just show us, and, just sort of take this opportunity off the table if this isn't it. And it just seemed like the deeper we got into it, the more he just continually affirmed that this is what he wanted us to do. And, so we ended up closing on it, and, then the real work starts, right? And then you start really sweating.
That's good. Marshall, where were you before this? Give us a quick background on your career pre buying a business with your dad.
Right. So kind of like where my dad had talked about it before was I had gone off away from the business that he was at Kimball, and was trying to just kind of figure out what do I want to do? How do I want to work? What are the things that I'm interested in?
Yeah.
I ended up getting a degree, like in industrial engineering, ended up using it into a mechanical engineering job for a company that's here local, making for like a metal shop. So
Space Systems, right?
Yes.
They have a different name.
They have a different name.
Okay.
So I learned a lot there about manufacturing and about how do you create the systems and the processes that go around it. And I ended up moving into like a project management position about trying to help with all these parts moving through all these different processes, trying to help make sure the important ones are being streamlined and getting to their delivery dates.
Yeah.
But during that time, I ended up having a lot of different like frustrations and just about like, well, I really want to be able to make these types of different changes to like a process, to the culture. And then kind of realized that no matter how hard I worked in that context, trying to make it better and more efficient, it would never really kind of come back to me as a direct benefit.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'd probably just be making the same amount of money as I was at that point 5 years from now, even if I had done all this stuff to help the company. So I was like, well, at that point I was kind of trying to have like a heads up mentality of like, well, what are the different options that might be available for me coming up? And that was around Christmas time. I'd been kind of doing some research, just looking around for about like maybe a month.
Was anything with him on your radar at that point?
No, not at all. Yeah. It was just a kind of personal, what do I want to do? What do I want to think through?
Yeah,
and like,
what's next for me?
Exactly. And like, as I was working there during that whole time, me and my dad talked a lot about like, what does it look like to have, like, what's the best version of a company? Like, what is that supposed to look like? What's the best culture to try and cultivate to be able to create the best success? So we were having all of these different type of like really deep conversations about business and business management way before we ever got to the opportunity of like, hey, do we want to buy a business together?
Yeah.
Which I remember when he said that, I was like, that sounds kind of crazy, but I mean, I have this manufacturing experience. You have this construction experience.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what commercial cabinetry is. It's this merriment of both.
Yeah.
So it was really exciting, really nerve wracking because I'm like, well, I thought you would be just wanting to kind of lay low. If you're wanting to do this, by all means, let's look and see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But so that's where we started.
That's great.
At that point.
Yeah. Hey guys, real quick before we get into it, I want to introduce our sponsors for this episode, Natural State Wealth Advisors. Daniel Wright and Connor De La Rosa have an incredible team, and they're able to offer both tax and financial planning advice for their clients. If you're a small business owner or CEO, you know the value of having both tax and financial planning on your team personally. I personally use them as well for all of my tax preparation needs and have been really impressed with just the level of detail that they show each of their clients. You can check out the link below to go to their website, or I can connect you directly with Daniel or Connor myself. Thanks for listening. Explain what Pender-Craft is, what you're trying to do. Just explain the business model briefly for us.
Hey, Kyle, hang on. Before we do that, go back one time, Brad, with us. If you're thinking about dads diligizing a business, trying to pick a business to buy or to start with a son or a daughter, can you remember what factors or filters were you checking out to say this is a good one? Or was it primarily just a spiritual experience? And this is not a right or wrong question. This is just trying to give maybe some insight for another person that's thinking about doing this. Like, what kind of things were you looking at to say, this is a good idea, this is worth taking the risk with?
That's a great question, Steve. And I wish I had this matrix that I would say we passed all these opportunities through and, we evaluated it. It really didn't start out that way. It was more organic. But when Marshall and I went to look at the business together, I think we naturally found some alignment of things that were core strengths, like what Marshall was saying a minute ago. What we found was when we went to this business, a lot of the equipment and a lot of the means and methods they used were right in Marshall's wheelhouse.
Okay.
Like, for example, the CNC machine and a lot of the things that they were using, Marshall had been writing code for that. He actually started out at his old job, literally writing code for the exact CNC machine that they had in this business.
Wow.
So the previous owner, who's a wonderful person, he and Marshall just started talking about the little quirky idiosyncrasies of being able to work with this particular machine, and immediately just found a lot of common ground. And then, I didn't know I still don't know much at all about that. But for Marshall, it was like I could see he was operating in an area of his strengths.
Yeah.
And then when we went over and we started looking at their customer list, well, I knew probably 60 or 70% of the customer list on a first name basis. Yeah. If I didn't know them, I knew who they were, or I'd had some previous contact with them. So in a way, it was like this area of Marshall's expertise and this area of my previous life experience that just sort of came together. And, I think if I was going to do it all over again and we actually wrote out some sort of matrix that we were going to pass things through, a decision matrix, I really can't imagine there being a better fit than what we found.
That's great. That helps me in my head know how you guys got to a yes. Because I can imagine a lot of people would be trying to figure out, the economics had to fit, obviously, but besides that, what else was really helpful for you guys getting to a yes? So slide on in and give us a snapshot of the business.
Well, I think that's great dovetailing to the why, part of the why. This business, I felt like I had some competencies to bring to the table, and I felt like Marshall had some competencies to bring to the table.
Yeah.
And we both agreed that this business was a family business. They had sort of capped out at a couple $1 million a year revenue by choice. It wasn't because they couldn't. I think they made a decision. This is sort of where we want to take it to. And there were so many things in the business that we felt like were just home run type things, like their quality, their reputation. We had a great team of employees, and we felt like the business had a lot of opportunity to scale. So we felt like if we would jump in and bring some energy and some new vision or different vision, we felt like it was something that had a lot of upward potential. So when we went home that night after doing the walkthrough and talking, that's what we found ourselves discussing. Is like we really truly could meet in the middle with our skill sets. We both brought something to the table, and it just seemed like it had a tremendous amount of upside.
That's great. That's great.
Not to keep delaying us getting to the business model, but we talked about this with someone else. And you were talking about risk a second ago. How did the element of risk come into play when you considered this now that Marshall was involved? We were talking to another dad and son, and, the son is saying, I don't want a handout. Like, give me, I'm not speaking for you, but like, I know we've talked about it.
Oh yeah.
Don't de-risk my exposure. I want in. But then the dad is like, okay, well, I'm also still your dad. So like there's part of me that kind of wants to protect still. Did that show up at all? That element of here's a big risk. Do I hedge it? Do I not? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I could probably answer that on a couple of different levels.
That's okay.
Construction is a brutal environment sometimes. It's just intense. And, early on as a dad, you want to sort of create a situation, for your kids to succeed or to thrive. And I remember early on, Marshall, while he was very adept at engineering and a lot of the manufacturing part, he didn't know anything about construction. So I think it's be fair to say it was a little bit of a culture shock for him to go out into a job site, and you got some grouchy old superintendent that's chewing on him on day one, and I mean he doesn't know where he's at or what's going on. It's just it's just total chaos, and so Marshall, I can remember, especially those first few months, just him learning a lot of really painful lessons, and he had never owned a business before. And I mean, really one of the first major points of conflict that he and I had in the business, we had some employees that had done some knuckleheaded stuff. I mean, just typical stuff, nothing bad. But the general contractor got mad at him, and he's like, I don't think that's fair that he got mad at me. And I remember us having this long discussion. I was like, dude, it's totally your fault. And he said, I didn't do it. And I said, but it's still totally your fault. And what I was sort of driving at was, we own the business. It's always going to be our fault. There's a different level of culpability. We've got more skin in the game. We're always going to be responsible for it because we're owners. And I feel like probably I threw him into the fire a little bit quick on some of that, and just because I wanted him to learn. And I knew I wouldn't. My viewpoint was the quicker he can learn this stuff, the better, and I was sort of lurking in the background, listening and talking to him. And, when necessary, there's been a few times I had to go, sort of put my thumb on the scale or get involved or help or, go out and install cabinets or just do whatever it took to, for us to get over the hump. But I really wanted him to be able to fight his own battles pretty early.
Yeah, that's good.
I think for me is like, him talking about having this goal of like, he has all like, I'm going to be re-entering and re-upping this risk. I think from my viewpoint, I was like, man, I want to try and make this as unrisky as possible, because I was like, man, I need to be able to help. He's taking the plunge on this. I want to help be able to work as hard as I can, have as much ownership as I can to make this really work. Yeah. So that way I wanted to try and be able to take care of my scope of work. But I wanted to also be able to kind of just have like eyes and ears, just making sure it's like, hey, is there anything else that's like that we need to be paying attention to? Just trying to have a heads up mentality. Yeah. But I mean, I think definitely you had those first couple of months that was hard, because it's like, okay, I just need to go back to square one. I mean, one of the funny things is every time we talk is like, oh man, it made sense because I have all this manufacturing experience. My immediate deployment was construction. And just learning all of construction as much as I can for at least my context. So I'm very thankful for having that. I'm not, no hard feelings at all, just because if that's the business, I need to know it. And I need to, also be able to show all the other people that I'm working with, our customers, our employees, I have just as much willingness to be able to work as hard as the people around me. And I don't want them to think it's a handout. I don't view it as a handout, but it's important for me to know, for them to know that it's not a handout and that's not how I'm treating it. Yeah. I have a high level of seriousness and intentionality in what I'm doing. And I'm here just to do it, like to do it just as hard and play as hard as the rest of the people around me.
That's great.
And I think for me too, it was one of those things like, I knew Marshall. We had worked together enough over the years. I knew that what he would bring to the table. I knew he would work hard and take it serious, and he would be a great steward of the opportunity. So I didn't worry about any of those things. Those things, those boxes were already checked in my mind that he would be a great partner. It was more like, honestly, just come to a point I was comfortable, and there's still some things I'm still wrestling with, to be honest with you, and some of that about, him growing to a point to be, an owner and a leader and I don't know, like I'm struggling here to even verbalize some of it, but you know, I am comfortable with the risk. I'm comfortable with putting capital out because I know Marshall, you know,
Yeah.
and I know that there's just risk, and there's risk inherent in any business. I think actually it's less risk because I know him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's cool.
That makes a lot of sense.
And you had worked together in the
Yeah.
past. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you guys. So give us just a snapshot of the business. So you bought a family owned a cabinet business, and you guys bought it.
We bought it. Yeah.
And,
27 years old.
27 years old. Just give us a flyby of the footprint of the business.
So the business primarily works in Northwest Arkansas, sort of Southwest Missouri, Eastern Oklahoma, probably about an hour and a half to 2 hour radius around Fayetteville, Arkansas. It's a 27-year-old business. We primarily produce commercial cabinets. So we don't do homes or residential stuff very often at all. Things like institutional cabinetry, schools, government buildings, medical cabinets like hospitals, ICUs, clinics, orthodontics, orthodontist office, dentist office, things like that. Optometrists, pharmacies, labs, commercial labs. And then we do a lot of retail, things like that, grocery stores or high-end office accent walls, a lot of customized, sometimes very niche type things where it requires a lot of engineering or sort of expertise to produce, not your high volume.
Yeah. So you guys are involved on the design side, the build out manufacturing side, and then the installation side, all the way to the start to finish. Here we go. All right.
Yeah, and that's to varying degrees too. Sometimes we actually get to design it from scratch and just sort of take it all the way through to the end. Frequently, we get an architect or an interior designer's drawings, and then we have to figure out how to actually build it. We're taking a concept and actually having to produce it.
The piece I think that I remember Kyle telling me about, the technology is a really important piece. Was the technology in place when you bought it, or did you have the vision to add technology? I know there was some equipment there, but was the technology vision part of the reason that made the whole thing make sense? Because you guys have made some pretty big swings with technology, have you not?
Yes. A lot of the equipment that we started off with would be the equivalent of somebody that's doing a small, the level that we bought the company at. It was good for that amount of volume. But a lot of the equipment that we've been starting to invest in is really for growth. It's for that next tier of manufacturing, of volume and intentionality. So you can probably weigh in more on that.
Yeah, and when we bought the business, we didn't buy the real estate. So we knew on day one we were going to have to move. And, you sort of have to go through the exercise of saying, okay, if we're going to build a building, I couldn't find anything to rent and didn't really want to rent, but building a new building for something like this, you sort of have to go through the exercise of saying, okay, how much is it going to cost to build a new building? What does our revenue need to be to support that type of building? Then we started asking the question, well, the equipment that we bought with the business, will that equipment do that kind of revenue? So we're sort of backwards calculating.
Yep.
Then we decided not only did we need a new building, we needed all new equipment. So, when we went out to look at equipment, a lot of the equipment that we had was 5, 10, 15 years old. So we looked at buying all new equipment. So I actually hired an industrial engineer out of Dallas who specialized in the woodworking industry. And he helped me pick all the equipment out. So there's a lot of robotics and a lot of things that are sort of next level type applications that makes the workplace safer, and it makes it a lot more friendly for the people that are actually working, in the business day to day. So we've bought all new equipment. It's taken over. We're still waiting on a handful of pieces. Some of that stuff actually next week is hopefully going to be delivered.
When you were moving in fully.
Yeah, we've moved into our new facility this past week and are up and running in it.
Nice.
But we're only probably 20% capacity in it because, obviously just when you're first moving in, it's sort of a challenge to get everything up and fine tuned. But,
right.
it's going to take us probably another 60 to 90 days to really be fully operational there.
Wow. So, tell us how you divided up roles early on, specifically amongst you two. It's co-owners, father, son. How are you dividing up ownership? Owner responsibility, operator responsibility. Who has what title? What does that look like? And kind of where you are now. You probably evolved a little bit since then.
I would say that probably a lot of it had to do with who was already there and who was coming with the business. Main categories of the business is there's the bidding and the drafting, the front end of the business, and then there's the manufacturing of all the pieces. And then there's the back end, which is doing all the installation and getting it to where it needs to go. So we already had two people that filled a lot of those front end roles. We had one person already had all the bidding and the drafting taken care of. We had another person that was already doing the manufacturing, which left the installation role needing to be filled, that's how I kind of navigated over to there. It's like, well, this is the hole that needs to be filled.
Yeah.
I need to learn this anyways.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and I'm going to start rolling with that role and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Part of that was a little bit intentional too. I felt like it would be real critical for Marshall to learn the customer facing part of it first, and so the installation and going out and working on site, I felt like that would be his greatest need long term. So we just wanted to make sure, just right from day one, he was out there in the field, putting it in, talking to customers.
That's awesome.
Learning the culture of a job site, what it means to be in construction, what the threats are. He understood a lot of the other parts, but that was the part he didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So I just felt like it was really critical for him to be immersed in that from the get go.
That's good.
So guys, are y'all, years ago, I wrote a book called The 5 Tasks. The job of the senior leader is to set direction, set speed, set risk, set resources, set culture. Are you guys joining? Are y'all just doing the top level things together, or is it a little bit more, Brad, because of your experience and your age, it's easier for you this first go around, and you're thinking maybe a couple of years from now, then you'll transition that. So how much of that's together? And I'm not saying this I know there's overlap, but when it comes to actually, really driving some direction for the business, and all, is it a collaborative? We're just we're gonna do rock, paper, scissors till we both get the same one, and we're okay, we know what we're doing here, or even the speed of growth and the scale speed and all that stuff. How are y'all doing that?
Building the building, big decisions.
I think for me, because I was in a situation where I was needing to learn a lot about construction very quickly, and because my dad already had a ton of experience in being able to do a lot of these calculations, he already had experience as an executive where I didn't. He took a lot of the lead on that. And I would say one of the things that I've admired about how my dad's gone about this is he's been very diligent and always coming to me and say, hey, here's this decision. I want to talk it through with you and get your opinion. Even though I have no real experience to come to this decision, it's really helpful for me to learn from and talking through. It's okay, yeah, that's something that I have to think about. So I think in that case, he's really that discipleship, that mentorship that he's bringing by coming and saying, hey, here's these issues about how, this is the size building that we need to do. This is how I'm projecting all this revenue. This is where we need to be going. He's walked me through each step to help me understand how to think through it, how he calculated it. And then, really trying to equip me to be able to do that in the future.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
That's awesome. And that's on top of running the business every day.
Right.
We got to get all the cabinets to the X company that bought them. And by the way, on top of that, we're going to do this, this discipleship, growth, development plan for the duo, which is awesome. That's great.
Yeah. I've tried to be pretty collaborative in everything that we've done. Bring Marshall in, and we have a partner now in the business, and bring him in and sit down with him. And I don't. Some of the stuff I probably could have just pragmatically just said, okay, let's just go do this. But I felt like just talking some of that through with Marshall and including him in the decision making process. One, he had information from some of those customers or jobs that I wasn't first person to. I needed that information to really make a holistic decision. and that's just sort of started out like we have a leadership team. I try to include them on all the decisions we're making. Not that I'm scared to make a unilateral decision, but I try not to unless I have to.
Yeah. I mean, the beauty of that, Brad, is exactly what you said. You get a better decision probably because you've got a collection of experience and a collection of subject matter experts on it. But then you also are able to compress the discipleship learning curve for Marshall, because you're able to, by flowing him through the decision gates and all of that, his learning is he's just a lot faster in her ability to understand the why and the what and all the decision stuff. So that's great.
It's even part of it too. Like when Marshall was at the company he was previously at, and they're great guys. They're good company. I think some of the things like Marshall would at night when he would come over for dinner, when he was working there, he would say, "Dad, like I've got to go talk to this employee, or like I've got to, I think he had to fire one.
Yeah.
That he's like, here's what's going on, and it's like all these things sort of back-ended into the culture of the company that he worked with. And, we just started talking about what we felt like was a healthy culture, and a lot of those conversations over a year or more about, it was aspirational. It's like, what could we be like, or what should this be like? And, I felt like some of the conversations we're having now, even though they may be very tactical decisions, we want to make them through our values, or we want to make them using, being intentional with them, so just including him, I felt like was just a way to build on that, to answer some of those questions about our culture or where we're hoping to go.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it just feels like a really long ongoing conversation that we've been having for a long time, even like
since 2 days before Christmas.
Well, I mean,
right,
2 years,
3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even before that, I feel like, because even when we were when I was working at that old company and trying to like just process through a lot of that. And I would even say is like growing up, we'd have conversations about like, okay, how do we do this the most efficiently? So that way we can make a new record of it, or just like having that mentality where he's just teaching me to work. Yeah. I think that's really fun.
Yeah. Marshall and I, we have rental property, and Marshall and I used to go mow the grass on the rental property. So, and we paid him for it, and we saved all that money up, and that's how he bought his first car. Well, we would pull up to the site, and we would never talk to each other the whole time we were working. And so our record was to mow, weed eat, and blow off the driveway 22 minutes. But it's like we would talk about like, hey, how do we do this faster? What can we do? Yeah. So we would roll up and we knew what each other's jobs were, and we would just go at it.
That's awesome.
And there was all kinds of collective experiences over the years like that, sort of pour into us making a decision to work together.
Yeah, it's cool to see it culminate in this.
And there's been so many models of discipleship that have been cranked out over the years, but none of them, all the ones that are effective usually include some element of life on life, like you guys are talking about. I mean, it's not the only thing, but usually every model I've ever seen that's really effective is it's two people kind of just journeying together, life on life, having, as Marshall, you said, just this long ongoing conversation that's been going on now for like 4 years or 5 years or 6 years or something. So that's a fun way to think about it.
Right.
I say this a lot, working with families uniquely rewarding, but uniquely challenging as well. What's been uniquely rewarding for you so far, and what's been uniquely challenging in this journey?
I think probably talking about uniquely rewarding is, actually getting to see the fulfillment of that ongoing conversation and actually like really get to practice that. And I think it's been really fun because I remember within a lot of I would say it's still like this, but especially like in those first couple of months, we'd have a conversation and we both kind of already knew the rationale, the philosophy okay, this is why we're wanting to try and make that decision. So we kind of went through that part really quickly, and then we just get to the tactical part. We're like, yeah, we agree with the principles. Let's practice it. So I think actually getting to the action of all these theoretical things is probably the most fulfilling just on a business education level.
Any example come to your mind? It's okay if not.
Oh man, I don't have a specific one
it's
probably
all right.
off the top of my head.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good.
Yeah, I think, when you start something, you dream a lot together. Hey, what could this be? Or, where do we want to go? Or what's the future going to look like in this? And Marshall and I, early on, we started dreaming some things together.
That's
Like,
great. That's fun.
one of the most, I think, tangible things is our new building. And wouldn't it be great to have like a new building that had more than one bathroom?
Yeah.
Or that had a break room or had a refrigerator, or we actually had a dock that we can unload stuff and it not get wet.
Or have a office where we can close the door and have a private conversation.
Yeah. So our old building, when we bought it, it had no office really. It had one, it was like a closet almost that we worked out of. There's no meeting space. There was no private offices at all. So I bought a camper. And so we've got a camper, a 30-foot camper that has a couple of slide outs that we converted to an office space. So we got 4 guys that office there. And, so it's like now, like we just moved into this building and we have this wonderful magical thing called a conference room.
What are you going to do in there?
It's like it's amazing. Yeah. And like we have a TV in there, this big TV we can actually put a spreadsheet up on,
yes,
or put our calendar up on, or put, our ERP software up on.
So what are you going to do with the camper?
That's
Like
a
for
good question.
for sale?
I feel like it might find some use somewhere.
Yeah. But so that's one thing that's been super rewarding is to dream about having a new building. Something else for me as a dad, we recently there's a big school job going on that we're doing, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cabinetry, and Marshall's run the point on that as doing the project management on it. So I didn't feel like I had to go to this meeting. It was one of the kickoff meetings where we were meeting one-on-one with the general contractor. And, at that meeting, you're going to sort of set the stage, lay everything out and talk about, okay, this is the sequence of what's going to happen. We like to create sort of a order of priority for the job. We're going to produce what they need first. We want to make sure we align on that. You're not going to do everything at once. And so we do some groupings and stuff like that, sort of some stages or phases. So this was all coming together. Marshall's been telling me what's going on. And I was like, hey, I'm going to go to that meeting with you guys. And it's a large national contractor. So we went in and I sat down and met the general contractor's project manager and their staff, their superintendent. And then Marshall just led the meeting, led the whole thing. And,
That's rewarding. That's a rewarding experience.
Yeah. Just had a command of the whole thing. You could definitely tell he'd put a lot of thought and done all his homework, broke out everything, went through the whole meeting, and like as a dad, I was more of a dad in that meeting than I was a cabinet maker.
Yeah.
And just to sort of see him own that space, and do well. And they responded to him in a very favorable way. They're like, yeah, those are great points. We should do that. And, I sort of walked out and I was thinking, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'll sign up for that again.
Yeah. Well, that's why you bought the business. I mean, in some ways that was just a snapshot fulfillment of the why that you guys bought the business and the build out and the live out of a discipleship setup for us to, journey together.
Yeah. Those are some rewarding things, but there's also been some challenging things, just like you asked too. And, we are a deadline driven business and, construction, if our customers say, hey, you need to be here and get this done on this date, we've got to figure out how to do that and or work with them to remediate that if we can't do it by that date. Like we're going to have 90% of it by that date, but we're, this area is, not ready or whatever. So there's been some challenges in that, and there's been some pain points in it. I remember last year we were going to Florida. We were just going to take off a week, and my wife and I, we drove all the way down to Destin, and we got out that night, and we had a really great plan. We were finishing up this job, and somehow or another, just like the flu was going around, and like 3 or 4 guys called in sick, and we weren't going to be able to keep the deadline, So I called Marshall. He's in the bathroom throwing up and sick, and is just, he had it too. And so we got to Destin. It's a 12-hour drive. We got to Destin at like 6:00 that night, ate dinner, got up the next morning. I found out everybody had called in sick. So I told my wife, I was like, hey, I can't leave him there in that situation. So by 7:30, we were packed. We were driving back to, 12 hours again.
Drove down for dinner. Drove down for a beach dinner.
We ate dinner at the harbor in Destin that night and then drove all the way back the next morning. And
oh man.
And there was a lot of tension. It's like Marshall's sick and he's like, Dad, I don't think I can go. And I was like, Marshall, like, I hate this, but like, dude, you got to go. You got to be there. You're the owner. And so he went that morning and we sort of tied a knot in what we were doing. I got there the next morning and we put together sort of this plan of bringing in some help and all this other stuff. And, we were able to finish the job on time and in a way that I think, even though it was a little bit strained in that situation, I think the general contractor was probably pretty happy with us. But I mean, that's the kind of thing, like when you're in a deadline driven job like construction, you just got to get the job done. And I could tell you 20 other stories too of how we've had, maybe not bad conflict, but like, it's just like, we're just sort of butting up against each other. Like, hey, we got to go get this done.
Yeah.
And we got to figure out how to go do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah, that's good. Where'd you eat?
I'm sorry?
Where'd you eat down there?
Probably
Dewey Destin?
Yeah.
No.
The old one?
I think that night we went to AJ's.
Yeah. That's a good call.
Yeah. Yeah.
So last section here to kind of close it out for us. I want to talk about the future and what it looks like for you to maybe step out or slow down, and Marshall to speed up with some responsibility or leadership, in the business. Broadly speaking, we see kind of 3 seasons family businesses go through. Season 1 is the older generation's leading, younger's learning. Sometimes that's a week, sometimes that's a couple years. Y'all's is probably quick-ish. Second season is where you're both leading in some capacity, whether that's title, role, responsibility, whatever. And then the third season is the final, where the older generation's like, hey, I'm going to step out as some type of shepherd, advisor, beach sitter in Florida, whatever you want to do. And the younger generation is leading in some capacity. Where are you guys in that journey? And then if you were to fast forward to the end, what does the end look like?
I think the story's still being written.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the fairest way to probably answer that question. If the first stage, what'd you say what the first stage was? Like basically the older generation.
You're leading
and
younger
Marshall
generation's
sort of
learning, getting their feet wet.
I think Marshall, we might have probably started with Marshall in a leadership position. While he wouldn't have been responsible for the whole organization, I would have done that. I think we're probably fastly approaching a spot where I think he's already co-leading the organization. I mean, he's already making decisions that have a lot of gravity, a lot of weight. He's very instrumental in what we're doing day to day. He sort of gets it.
Yeah.
He's not responsible necessarily for all of the ins and outs of, the CEO role, but he is making a lot of very weighty decisions that impact our business. I think we're still trying to figure out that last part. Honestly, I wouldn't mind going to be the beach sitter tomorrow. I'm open to that. But I feel like we've got 2 or 3 years of hard work ahead of us just to really put the foundation in place that we need. And it's not that I necessarily have to do that.
Yeah.
But I just feel like I want to help and make sure that I feel like it's probably the most efficient way for us to get to where we need to go. We still have moving into the new facility for us. Being in manufacturing is different than a lot of other things. It's so facility driven, so we have to get that up and streamlined and working well because it impacts every other area of our business,
right.
So I feel like I have to hang around to make sure that's going to work out. And, we have recently transitioned. I'm still the CEO, but I'm taking on a lot more of a sales responsibility, and Marshall and one of the other gentlemen are taking over all the operations. So I think that's a big step towards that.
Yeah.
So Brad, does the next season, or either one of you, the next season of growth, are you guys going to try to grow outside of the geographical footprint you're already in, or is there just so much business to be had in the existing geographical footprint that if you can just improve your wallet share to speak of,
Yeah.
You'll be fine? Or like, what's scale look like for you guys? How are you thinking about scale?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're sort of, it's an all of the above approach.
Okay.
You know, we are looking to grow our market share here in Northwest Arkansas. Also, we are doing some stuff out of the, you know, in a larger footprint. You know, instead of being 1 or 2 hours, you know, it's more frequently we're doing stuff, you know, outside of that, you know, 3 or 4 hours away. I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to continue to grow our business that way. But then we're also taking on some different competencies, just some different type of work.
Okay.
One of the reasons we bought the equipment that we did is it's going to allow us to do more true manufacturing. You know, so instead of doing it for construction, we'll be doing a lot of things for, you know, like big box stores or other things like that. We'll be actually point of sale displays, things like that. You know, furniture, more true manufacturing rather than just everything being in construction.
Okay. So we could see a new furniture brand, we might see see your brand everywhere, your name anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but for us, really, we'll be working for the brand. They would contract us to actually make it for them, you know, so they would do the sales and we would build the product, hopefully. So.
Yeah. It's really fun. When we first sat down, we're in a venue, a really fun place called Stonebreaker that's here in Fayetteville. And, a buddy of ours is behind the whole project. But we did not know you guys actually did the cabinetry for this place, which was a really fun data piece to pop out.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. We're honored to get to do it.
Yeah. Marshall, what about you? When you think about the future and, you know, however many years down the road, do you feel yourself progressing in knowledge, skill, experience, leadership capabilities? Like, do you feel that, you know, bell curve happening? And then when you think about the future, how do you know when you're ready? What does that look like?
Yes, I'm still in like a season where I'm learning a lot, taking on a lot more like those, trying to gain a lot of those proficiencies as a part of an executive leadership team member. Yeah. And so there's definitely a lot of growth that I still need to have. But I mean, that's like one of my number one priorities is like, and one of my hopes in getting to really be involved with Pender-Craft is I want to be able to know and learn everything I need to be able to be a very competent, leader, a business leader. So I'm right. But beyond that, I'm kind of like, well, I'm kind of happy to just see what's the adventure that God has for me. Is it going to be here? Love to be able to do it here, be able to continue to grow. But I'm just really excited to see wherever it is God takes me in that. So yeah.
Cool. Great. Well, maybe to land the plane, I think we're going to ask most people on the podcast this question, but if you were talking to a dad, you know, your stage of life, similar career path, didn't have to jump back in at the ground floor of a small business, and they're thinking about, you know, working with their son, what would you tell them? And maybe same thing, Marshall, if you're talking to one of your buddies and they're like, my dad wants to go into business together, what do you say? What advice do you give? What kind of words of wisdom do you give them?
That's a great question. You know, I think you know your kids when they're small, when they're children, and you get to know them a little more as they're teenagers, you know, but when they're adults, they're their own person, you know, they become different people. And the opportunity to work with Marshall and get to know him as an adult and to interact with him at a high level, you know, like what we're doing, there's some real complexity to it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade that for anything. You know, it's like we get to be on the same team. We, as a family, part of the culture of our family is we play a lot of board games. Frequently, there's a lot of trash talk that's probably unchristlike that goes along with those board games. You know, so like all those board games and all those experiences, really, you're not risking much, you know, but when we're in business together and we're really risking we're risking our livelihood to some degree, and we're risking our reputations by delivering good quality product, and we're risking our relationship on a regular basis, you know, and, you know, I wouldn't trade that for anything. You know, the opportunity to work with him and to to be in his life and to see him grow and to flourish and to really become a godly man and to see how he interacts with other people. That how else do you trade? Where else do you get that? And, and also just to be, one of the big things that I've really encouraged Marshall to do is he's a different person than I am. And it's like, how does he find his own voice? How does he grow to a place? He didn't have to be me. He could never be me and I could never be him. But how do I play a role in seeing him find his own voice and his own leadership model that works good for him? And I think that's probably how it was, 20 centuries ago. Families worked together in trades or businesses, and they saw their kids grow up and mature, and lead, and it's like, I have this front row seat to see this amazing thing happen that I would never have otherwise. So that would be the greatest encouragement I could give to any dad.
That's great. That's great.
I think for me is like, one of the things I've admired about my relationship led by my dad is that he's always, like, growing up, always told me, he's like, man, I really love this season of being your dad now, but I look forward to the season where we get to be friends and we're peers and we get to work together. And I've always admired that he had that foresight. Like, he was always looking forward to that and knew that where we was at was a season. And I think that's, as a guess, is probably the hardest transition for any parent going into this, looking at this opportunity. Is like, okay, here I'm going to want to enter into business with my son. How do I take that view and really lean into it? And I would say any advice for somebody that's a son going into that is saying, hey, you have to be very gentle about how you remind, hey, I want to be your peer in this. I want to be your friend in this, that has equal share, that I'm taking this seriously. And you can't flinch away from and trying to pull the card of like, hey, I'm your son. I'm trying to take a more subservient position in this, or just say is like, hey, I need you to, like, just bail me out. Like, at least for me, I've tried to have like a very serious, is like, no, I have an ownership in this, and I need to step up to bat to really do this and earn it. Not this is a handout. So
that's great. Yeah. The kind of our vision for just these conversations is for more dads to see working with their son as a chance to amplify legacy, disciple them in the workplace, get to know them even at a deeper level, and for more sons to see working with their dad as an honor and not a handout. So that's kind of like our vision statement for this. And it was really inspired by you guys. So
I'm curious, the dynamics between the two of you guys, how does that play out?
We're asking the questions here.
that's why we're doing the podcast, so we can get some insights and some learnings. What'd you think while y'all were here? You're schooling us.
Yeah.
The learning's moving from that couch over to here.
Yeah, this is an MBA. No, I remember we can keep this on here. I think this is good, but I remember early on you said something like, "Hey, we've never worked together, so you're gonna have to give me some grace on something." I forget what was going on, because you're like, I'm trying to figure this out, and I was thinking the same thing. So I think grace is needed for sure. Honesty is needed as well. There's also similarities that come up. Like, I remember early on also you said something like, hey, if you send me something, I got it. Like, you don't have to follow up with me. It's in my inbox or in my text. Like, I got it. And it's hilarious because I said the exact same words. I'm like, if someone emails me something, like, don't worry, it's not going to go unnoticed. Like, I got it. And so just learning like the small, things that are similar or different is fun, because you don't get to experience that unless you are working in a professional setting.
Yeah.
So that's just I think.
I mean, the chance. I mean, Brad, exactly what you said. The chance of being, in the battlefield of a work setting. I don't mean to make that so dramatic, but like It's one thing just to simply be talking about, I'm a doctor. I come home and I talk about my surgeries or my visits with my patients that day, or I'm an executive in a construction company and I come home and I talk about it. I mean, it's great for people to hear about it. And it's not like there's nothing else you can do because you're the only guy going to work that day. You're the only guy putting it on the hat and coming back in. But when you have a family member involved in it day to day, it's just a different dynamic because you really are splitting the burden and the vision, and the dream, and two people are carrying it. It's kind of right out of Ecclesiastes, and it's awesome. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
But we're learning. We're learning because we're early into it. And, it's not like something that we grew up and this is the fourth generation of working in the family business and all those dynamics. And I'd never worked with a family member before Kyle. So I'm learning how to do it.
Does it carry more emotion with it?
Yeah.
There's more of a weight of emotion in it.
Yeah, no question. It is for me. I don't know if it's with everybody or if it's supposed to be, but it definitely is for me. And but I'm learning exactly what both of you guys talked about. You learn how to shift out of the role of I'm the dad to I'm the coworker, or I'm the co-owner, or I'm the owner, or whatever. Just there's another seat you can go to, not just the dad seat, that allows the emotions to kind of spread around a little bit and or have different emotions there. So the dad seat by itself can carry by itself a lot of emotions.
It's almost like it adds another position for you to view your relationship.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like I've been a dad. Now I'm still a dad, but now I'm a coworker.
Yep.
And we didn't have that coworker seat before.
Exactly.
That vantage point to be able to view life from.
That's great.
It's fun.
You guys ought to start a podcast. You're asking great questions.
You should.
I remember what the funny thing is like a lot of times when we go into conversations, we'll preface it like, "Hey, this is an owner's conversation, not a father's."
That's
son.
great. That's great.
Yeah,
that's great,
that's
Marshall.
good.
We talk about what hat we have on before we start the conversation.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good
really
clarity.
good insight.
Yeah, good
really
clarity.
good insight for anybody working with a dad son or dad daughter for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, do you think there's any inherent pitfalls that? So like if we're just going to survey like what we're going out into this battlefield, are there any inherent pitfalls that maybe working with a family member might have that you wouldn't otherwise have? Like, are there any unique dangers?
Yeah. Brad, I don't know that answer off the top of my head. I'm going to ask you back because I want you to answer the same question. I would say anecdotally though, I would say, I think working with a family member can put a spotlight on some of your blind spots and or some of your unhealthy work habits. Like if you're just used to being the bully and everybody's letting you be the bully because you own the company and nobody wants to cross the boss that owns everything, that's fine. Well, if you're the bully to your son, it's going to eventually bubble back around because he's going to tell his wife if he's married, and she's going to tell your wife, and all of a sudden you got a situation. So I think it might drive a little, if you're actively involved in a bunch of unhealthy dynamics, in leadership, unhealthy dynamics, that could come back and bite you a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. But it's a really good question. What do you think? Any pitfalls that just pop out immediately?
I'd throw
Marshall,
one out there.
you got one joke. Go.
Can we edit this out?
Yes,
Oh,
we
yeah.
can. Yes, we can.
This is the trailer right here. No.
Well, one thing that's really interesting is for me and my dad, we have pretty distinct different personalities. So I would say, I think that in itself is kind of, it's a challenge area, because if you're both the same personality, you're going to have the same weaknesses and blind spots. If you have two different personalities, at least for me in my situation, I'm like, well, how the heck am I supposed to do all this tasks, but I can't necessarily in these areas, I can't model it exactly after him because I'm just totally different.
Right.
To me, it's like my dad is the epitome of the saying, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly.
Yeah.
And I'm not that. I'm not that epitome of that saying. It's like, I'm kind of like the teddy bear going around. So I have to be able to have different tools in my pocket to be able to figure out, how do I have a hard conversation? How do I have a meaningful conversation?
Marshall, which is a really an interesting, a good insight is the best way to say it, because a lot of times we match ourselves with people that are just like us, like a lot of father sons or father daughters are going to be, I mean, they're going to be just alike.
Mhm.
Other ones are going to be the yin and the yang. They're going to be like, you know, I'm the hand, you're the glove. I'm the out facing, public facing, you know, a lot of energy, extrovert. You're the introvert, you're the detail person, whatever. And so probably both of those carry pitfalls. If we both are alike, there's some issues to cover. If we're different, there's some pitfalls to cover.
Right.
You know, Brad, what you got?
Yeah, I think I'm an Enneagram 8, which just means I'm a jerk a lot of times.
Really?
You're an 8 too.
I am an 8.
Marshall's a 6.
Yeah.
You know, so being an 8, we actually hired an Enneagram coach to come and work with our family through some of the family dynamics that we have.
Cool.
And I think that was really valuable because I learned that Marshall, he's just not ever going to be me. He's never going to be an 8. No matter, I could project that on him and want him to be an 8, and it's just not going to happen. But I'm never going to be a 6.
Right.
But I think one of the things that's been challenging for me is like Marshall really knows me. Like he knows all of the weaknesses of my temperament. And, you know, I think sometimes that may be a strength because he's like, okay, Dad just needs a minute to sort of bring the 8, the intensity level of an 8 down to a more normal level. Just chill out for a minute and then we'll reapproach it. But, you know, at the same time too, I think the danger of that is I might unintentionally wound him in a way that now it's just not at work that I wounded somebody and I'm going to bring that home and it's going to impact our family dynamic to some degree maybe.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, bravo. Let's close it on this one. Bravo for you guys taking the chance and having the faith to re-risk, not de-risk at this stage in life. And even in your stage in life, you know, it could be a lot easier perhaps to go get a different job than all the family dynamics. And so, congrats guys. Well done. And what a great testimony. You're all to a lot of other guys.
thanks. Yeah,
for
thanks
having
for
us.
your guys' help and pulling it all together.